Hey, it's episode 693. We've been talking all week about how to recalibrate your efforts, what that means, how it works, some of the things, the challenges related to it. Today, we're going to talk about what we've discovered this week. I can't wait to hear what Tom's discovered. I know I discovered one or two things. All that and more on today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Bob. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm excited.
You are? Why?
Yeah, I'll tell you why in a minute.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's going to be my celebration.
Fair enough. Okay, that's good to know. I was like,
I did a bucket list thing last night.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, let's get right to it because I can't wait to hear that. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast.
Easy for you to say.
All right, my throat, little early morning throat stuff, where we have a conversation around a topic each week. This week, we've been talking, as Bob mentioned in the opening, about recalibrating your efforts. And on Fridays, we always share our discoveries of the week. So as we go through that conversation, we welcome your thoughts and ideas because we know it'll add value to our show. So whether you are watching us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or
LinkedIn Live, baby.
LinkedIn Live, we welcome,
baby.
We welcome your thoughts and ideas because we know that'll have an impact on our show and maybe impact someone out there through the conversation. But at the end of the conversation today, or throughout the conversation, I guess I should say, we will share our discovery of the week, those things that we learned from having the conversation around this topic. And of course, if you would like to share your discovery of the week, your thoughts and ideas about what you found out throughout the year, we would welcome that as well. So please feel free to put that in the chat because we know that what you've discovered may be exactly, and when you share, it might be exactly what someone else is looking for when they are stuck, frustrated, overwhelmed, and unsure how to take that next step along their own unique pathway to success. And before we dive into that conversation, though, we always share our celebrations. So, Bob, what are you celebrating today?
So, first of all, the reason we celebrate is to get us into that space, mental space. I think it's mindset. I think it's also confidence to take that next step in whatever we're doing. And so last night I got to do something that has been on my bucket list for as long as I can remember, and that is go see Hamilton. So
college? You went to the college last night?
Very nice. Tom, a graduate of Hamilton College. So they'll send us $20 because he mentioned it. And he did it, actually $40 because he did it organically. He didn't work it in. So very nicely done.
Or Hamilton Community on the east side there of Baltimore?
Oh, I know exactly. I used to take guitar lessons in the Hamilton Community. You pulled a fastball on me there. That got right by me. So anyway, I saw this production, and I'm a writer, and the economy of words, the magnitude of the words, the way the words conveyed a message, and the beauty of the music, and all that it was. As a writer, there were moments where I was just in awe, like, how did he connect these two words and get them to rhyme? And how did he do this? And it was something for a writer. Like, I could go back probably 30 times to analyze it because there was so much going on. Plus, on the surface, Hamilton's just beautiful. Mm-hmm. And it tells about a part of our history that, a lot of us kind of glossed over in elementary school. Now, I know it's not all factual. There are a couple liberties that they took with it, but I watched last night. There were about 2,500 people in the theater, and I watched a lot of people as they were leaving say the same thing. I had no idea that this happened, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about a musical or Broadway show or a book or something, that we can bring something to life that happened, but it's kind of forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the founding fathers, he's not one of the ones that typically, prior to this musical, that you would have thought of, and the role that he played.
Yeah.
It's pretty significant.
Yeah, I would say, since our whole money system is based on his ideas and a
Yes,
whole bunch more. Yeah.
correct.
So got to do that. I also got to go with someone that's really special to me, which made it doubly great. This was a person who has not had the privilege of seeing a lot of this high level performance, and to watch her take it in. You know, the best way I can describe it. Do you ever see Pretty Woman, the movie with
Yes.
Julia Roberts?
Yeah.
And Richard Gere's character takes her to the
opera.
Opera. There was an element of that going on, which was not that she cried, but it was just that whole idea of being exposed to something you're not accustomed to. And it was beautiful. It's a beautiful theater. The Hippodrome in Baltimore is from like 1914, so it's got that really cool architecture and tiny seats. For a tall guy like me, not so good.
So you were comparing yourself to Richard Gere?
In that, yes, and I was comparing her to Julia Roberts. So let's focus on the right things here.
You mean what was real?
You said that, not me. I'm not. She was every bit as beautiful as Julia Roberts, and then some.
Excellent. Wonderful.
How about you?
So this Friday, I am celebrating my last college fall ball game.
Okay.
I get to head down the road to Emmitsburg, to the Mount St. Mary's.
The Mount, up on the hill.
Up on the hill. Yep.
It'll be windy.
It'll be a little windy and a little cool at 6 o'clock at night, and that's okay. So my last college game for the fall, which will lead into a full weekend of fall high school club youth lacrosse following that on Saturday and Sunday. So
Tom officiates women's and girls lacrosse, just so you know. He's not playing lacrosse.
Correct. Yes.
And he's becoming one of those high level grade A, division A lacrosse officials. He's not talking about it, but he's moving up those ranks.
That's like comparing, I should say this.
Richard Gere to me.
You said it, not me. I didn't say it. The thought went through my head. I didn't share because I thought that's not really very nice.
I like that. I put Richard Gere to me. That's even funnier.
Fair. So I'm looking forward to that, and then sort of transitioning seasons into now for the next month. It'll be youth and girls lacrosse. So that's my celebration.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know you enjoy that a lot. It's great that you do that because there's a need for that. You know, having opportunities for kids to get out and do sports. I think they learn so much about teamwork, about rising to the occasion when things aren't going well, about making decisions in the moment, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Communication. You know, it's fun. When I was teaching college, you could tell the athletes from the other students just in the way they handled adversity.
It's interesting, you know, as you were talking through that, I was thinking that's exactly the same thing that performers, people who are in the performing arts have a very similar, although I don't think we always equate that.
No,
people talk about that in athletics all the time. And I think sometimes we forget that in the performing arts, there's a lot of the performing arts and athletics are very similar. Yeah. More similar than most people would agree. Would think so, or consider.
No, well, and we were looking, you know, at the end of the performance last night, we were watching them take the curtain call, and 4 or 5 of them were like out of breath.
Sure.
So yeah, it is, you know, a good performance can be like an athletic event. I mean, I know when I speak, and I don't do any kind of dancing when I speak, if I can avoid it. Once in a while,
no,
I dance. You know, there's a little bit of, you know, Saturday Night Live going on every now and then, but I try to keep, you know, and a little footloose. I have been known to do some footloose.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about
that. You know, but I try to keep that out of my presentations. And so I don't, the sheer athleticism of my performances is not nearly that of the cast of Hamilton or an athlete, but even that can exhaust you. You know, if you do a workshop or two, you can be wiped out.
No doubt, no doubt. It wears on you in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find it. I was hoping that quickly I could pull up the video of you trying to dunk a basketball just when you talked about your athletic prowess. And
Oh, thank goodness.
for some reason, it's not here in my things that I can pull up.
Oh, now what have you done? Wow, you pulled something else up.
Oh, sorry. I got a little carried away there. That's what happens. Stick to what I'm doing.
So why don't we start talking about the topic du jour, or the topic of the day, and that is recalibrating your efforts. We had I thought one of the weeks of all the weeks we've had discussions, I thought this week we really went in a lot of different directions and really brought in a lot of ideas. Each day, I know afterwards I said to you, wow, that was really a good discussion. And I say that a lot, but I really felt like this week we went in some directions I wasn't expecting. And my discovery of the week is really simple. And that is, I thought about recalibration as something tied very closely to the outcome. So I'm not achieving the result I want to. So I need to change a whole bunch of stuff to get there usually. And what I think this week has brought to me is it's not about the big changes, as you said really eloquently several times. It's about little changes along the way. It's a slight deviation from where you're going, not a major one. And we talked earlier in the week about, doing ads or something like that, where, we're doing these Facebook and LinkedIn ads, and we didn't have the results I was kind of expecting the first week. And I said to Tom, we should probably, scrap the whole thing or change things dramatically. And you said, probably rightly, hey, why don't we give it some more time? And as we've given it more time, we've learned some more about it, and we've seen the results start to change. And I think we tend to knee jerk. I do. Like, I spent, I sent 22 emails this morning and no one's gotten back to me. That was a stupid email. Why was I sending that email? What was I thinking? That's terrible. And then the next morning, 4 people respond back, and it's like, oh, that was the email I was getting ready to throw away. And I think we do that a lot because we don't want to wait for those results. And we're also so geared on those results, not the actions. And I think that's something you and I have really spent a lot of time in the last 2 years really focusing on, is it's about the actions. If you take the actions, you can't control the results. And I will tell you, the word control is a hot button word for me. We've talked about it before. I want to control the results as much as I can, but the more I try to control the results, the less I achieve those results. And that's one of those contradictions that I think is really wrapped in this whole recalibrating your efforts. Is at the end of the day, what you're really saying is, hey, you know what? You can only control certain things. You can control the actions you take. You can modify your actions, but you can't control what's going to happen when you take those actions.
I like that. Yeah. I mean, I think that's an important piece of it. And I think, one of my discoveries was the conversation yesterday. It's kind of like you actually have to take the action to find out what the outcomes are from it. And I think so often we dance around the action, and I'll get to it, or, and then once we get to it, we don't always answer the questions that we are either asking ourselves or someone else is asking. And I think that that's a big piece of how do we figure out how to go where we're going next, is being willing to answer the challenging question, or the question that seems so simple as like, why would we even answer? Why would we even respond to it? And I think that that's the way that we learn, that if we don't take actions, if we don't answer our questions, how are we going to ever learn where we're at, what we're doing, and what we want to do next? And I think that's the, almost the beauty of it. It's like we have these conversations every week, and I think we could have the conversation and have 5 days of a topic and then move on. Mm-hmm. That would seem, and yet I think the opportunity to learn that we do because we ask the question today. Really, the question is, what did you discover this week? And it could have been, our response could be, well, it was a nice conversation. It was interesting. It was, no, but that's not answering the question.
Right.
It's really answering the question is getting deeper into what did we discover, and which can allow us to then figure out what we want to do next. Doesn't mean that answer is easy. It's just a little bit clearer. And I think too, to me, I think the real discovery that hit home with me was how we can so easily just respond to a question. And it's easy to do that to ourselves. It's a lot harder to do it when someone else asks the question. You can do it, and then maybe you need to find other people. And if you find yourself just responding to people who ask you questions, it might be time to find somebody different to ask those questions. Somebody who's going to push you a little bit to really figure out, push you to answer it. So then you can figure out what you want, what the next step would be. Because when we just respond there, it's hard to really, the next step is not really an action. It's more of just typically it's a like, throw your hands up in the air and either say we're good or we're going to throw it all away and start all over again. Not really sure why.
Or we don't really listen to the question, right? How many times have you said to someone who's expecting you to say, how are you doing? And I'll say to someone, what's up? They'll be like, good. Like, wait a second. That's not the answer. You didn't listen to the question. You presupposed the question. And I think sometimes we do that as well. We don't really dig into the answer, and we don't really listen to the question that has to be asked. I mean, we asked some hard questions about those ads. What are we trying to do? What are some things we know? We really pooled our knowledge. And I think it's hard to do that by yourself. I really think one of the things that I've really valued in the last almost 3 years is the time you and I spend before and after the programs, where we're able to ask each other questions and we're able to say, hey, wait, whoa, you said that thing on the show. What did you mean by that? And challenging each other, not in you're a jerk way, but hey, is this what you really want? You brought something up a couple of days ago in my personal life, and you raised issues that no one else would raise with me. And while I wasn't completely comfortable with the discussion, I was incredibly comfortable with the idea that I had someone in my court who was willing to ask me the hard questions so that I could figure out what I really wanted, because I could have glossed over and said, yep, that's what I want. And I think we do that all the time as leaders. And, I've worked for leaders that won't even let their employees ask them the hard questions. Hey, it seems like you changed courses in the last couple of days. I'm a little confused because we were going this way and now we're going this way. Can I ask you why? And they go, no, it's not. Just do what I say.
Well, I think we become so programmed to. It's interesting how you said that. When somebody asks you a question, or you ask them a question, and they respond, and we've all done it in what we thought they were going to ask us, because that's the routine we've been in. That we've been, so often. Sometimes we're surrounded by people who ask us the expected question. That's the status quo.
How's your day?
How's your day?
How's business?
Right.
Good.
Yes. And again, that's not really answering the question. It's just a throwaway answer response in an effort to be like, you really don't want to talk about it. It's interesting when people say that, you're kind of like, how really good is it? If that's the response they're giving, or
because if it's good, they're telling you, oh, it's been a great week. I sold 43, Buicks. Yeah.
Right. That's an answer that allows them to say, and you could be like, because now I can follow up with a question.
And also understand what makes it good, right? Good for you and good for me are very different some days. Some days they're very similar. Absolutely. I'm all excited because I got to see Hamilton last night. You saw Hamilton, what, a year and a half, 2-3 years ago? You're going, yeah, been there, done that. You know that it's exciting to me, but you know that because I gave you some of the backstory around it. Had you not known that, like, oh, we went to Hamilton. Okay. And I think that's part of what we do with our customers as well. We we don't listen to their questions, or we don't ask them the questions that really get at the answers to what would help us have the knowledge, experience, and perspective to go forward.
It's interesting. I used to, in one of my past roles, I noticed that there was someone that I worked with that every time they were at an event and they met someone, they asked the exact same first question all the time. That really was like, I mean, it was like, what do you do? And I guess that's an easy, simple question. And it's also a question that's like not really, when you ask it all the time, I'm not sure that it's really, you really care, or you're looking for a certain answer, not really like what's the individual response that you're going to get from this person. And, you know, and I think sometimes it becomes so easy to fall into that habit of either asking because we're looking for one piece of things. We don't really care about the person. We care about the answer that they give, because that's going to drive what's next. So it just is an interesting.
Can I bring some a comment in? And
Sure.
I want to thank. Is it Michael Kintner? Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. He understands the game very well, because he sent a follow-up message with his last name. He probably saw I was scrambling around. I was trying to figure out who wrote this. And thank you so much, Michael, for understanding. See, there's someone who asked the question, what is it that these guys need to be successful? He told us his last name, which makes it so much easier. I love that he's that focused on what we do. So he says, I think it's important to always be truthful and say how it is. Sometimes they don't want to hear it, but it's important that they hear it. And I think that's really true. And I also think it's important as well that we say it, because as you've gotten me to understand, it's about what's real for you or me in the moment. It doesn't mean it's the gospel. It just means that you see it that way right now. And 5 minutes from now, you might see it differently, or 5 years from now, you may see it the same way. And it doesn't mean that it's forever.
I agree. And I think one of the things about that I've started to be more cautious of is, are they in a place where they can hear what you're ready to say?
Right.
And do they really want the feedback? So I had an experience where I was doing a game, and there were some things going on with one of my partners that I thought was odd, or were just, not really at the level of the game that we were doing.
Okay.
And I had some feedback that I wanted to share with them, and yet they never asked. And so I didn't share it. And even though I think it could have been valued for them, I believe that there sometimes are times where people aren't in a place or a space where they can hear it. You know, one of the conversations I had recently with a client was, finding out from the people we work with, how do they like to get feedback or hear things? Mm-hmm. Some people do, some people don't. One of the easiest ways I learned that was when my wife finally told me, I don't want your golf tips when we're playing golf. I just want to go out and play and hit it and have fun. If I ask,
one of my favorite stories.
It was a lesson I learned fairly early.
A wise man right there, folks.
And I think that's helpful. Is like, sometimes there is a truth, and yes, they may need to hear it, and sometimes they don't want to hear it, or they're not in a place where they think it's valuable, maybe because of who it's coming from. And so that's what I think what Michael says is great, and I would agree with it, with the little caveat of, sometimes people aren't really in a place to hear it, to gain value from it. And they hear it in a different way that doesn't get the value across that you were hoping for. And so unfortunately, the message gets lost.
And we may not be in a place to give it effectively either. In the heat of the moment.
Fair, absolutely.
Your official friend maybe during a game doesn't want that feedback, because just like if you're playing golf and someone says, hey, you're cranking your wrist too much. I can't take that in at that point. I need to go to the driving range and spend an hour figuring out what that means. I can't just make that shift on the fourth tee. And I think that's a two-way street, right? That's part of being a leader. You know, being successful as a leader to me is being able to know when someone needs feedback, when they want feedback, and then delivering it to them in a manner in which they can actually absorb it and give you the feedback that they would give, like, oh, that's interesting. I saw it this way. And then to me, that dialogue is really the best thing to come out of it, because now you're sharing ideas that usually leads to something better.
And I think so often that it's feedback isn't always balanced. And so they, you know, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with a client the other day, because they're, you know, dealing with, not only do they manage people, they have people who manage people. And, you know, I think that sometimes we have built this system. You know, think about if your boss ever said to you, hey, can you come in and close the door? Likely, most people walk into that and like, oh God, what did I do wrong? What happened? And
I got chills when you just said it.
Right? I mean, it has been set up
that someone who almost drove their car off the road.
That there are people who, when they hear that, they're like, oh, this is going to be not good. And so now they go in with a perspective, and you can't really have those conversations. And, you know, and I think sometimes the only time we're ever giving feedback is what the person getting it would think is critical, you know, then it's not as, I don't think they really hear it, because they just see it as somebody else who, you know, and depending on the space they're in, may not want to hear it. I think it's one of those things. One of the things interesting about officiating is one of the biggest challenges is when you have thoughts or ideas about someone who's been officiating longer than you, who is a higher level official, to step in and say,
your spouse?
No. I mean, yes. And,
because Tom's wife also officiates.
And it is it's just one of those things, like, because there's always that questioning of yourself is, well, this is what I'm seeing and I want to share this. And yet that person's been doing it longer. They understand, you know, I believe they understand things more differently. Some people would be like, hey, what do you know? You're a first-year college official. Go back to your position, and I've got this covered. And I've heard that response, not personally, but I've heard people talk about that. And so I think you're always, unless you've had that conversation of like, how do you like to get feedback? You know, one of the great things that we do when we officiate in a game, and I think is really great for managers, is to have the conversation of like, okay, what happens if we have thoughts or ideas that may differ from someone else? You know, I encourage this client that I was working with to go over and have a conversation about like, how do you like to receive feedback? Do you like it written? Do you like it in an email? Do you want to sit down and have a conversation around it? Like, how do you receive it? Well, and it's going to be all types of feedback, you know, without really, like, what I don't like to do is classify it as positive or negative, as you know, 2 words I don't like to use. It's just feedback. It's just your thought around something. And so we do that in a game. We'll sit down and have a conversation before the game, because you got sometimes brand new partners. And we'll talk about like, okay, if this happens, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle it? If you see something that doesn't look a correct setup, you know, blow your whistle, come in, and let's have a conversation about it. It's not always the case. Sometimes people are like, this is my space. You're not supposed to be looking here.
Right.
Stay to where you're supposed to be.
Stay in your lane, right?
Yeah. And so I think at least having that understanding of kind of what's expected, and how do people want to hear or to be asked those questions? And that's, I think, one of the beauties of asking the question is you're not coming in and saying, this is this. It's like, hey, can we talk about this? Like, what happened? What did you see? What, you know, this letter that you sent, what was your goal? How do you think it went? Are there things you could do differently? You know, all those things it's a way to get your ideas and thoughts to them without coming in and say that letter wasn't any good. It wasn't, it wasn't effective. You had 2 spelling mistakes, and now the person is just, how are they going to learn for that, except they'll just be terrified to send their next letter.
I want to bring some of Michael's comments in. He told always best to be a yes man. Sometimes it's hard to say, but sometimes it's needed to be said. And he follows up with this, not always sorry, which I like.
I 100% agree with that. I think the key is having the conversation ahead of time of how can we share feedback that is going to be received as feedback, not judgment, criticism. You did this wrong. I think so often, especially when you're in those power relationships, it's hard to not take it as judgment and just to see it as feedback, as things that you could consider and think about how, what is your answer?
I certainly struggle with that. I struggle a lot with the whole feedback is just feedback, not criticism. And often it's you did it wrong is the first thing I hear. Like the other morning when we were talking about something, I was literally, I had to talk myself out of, Tom thinks I did something really wrong here.
After all this time, you would think I would use that word.
It's not what you use. I mean, that's part of what makes this difficult, right? Because we're trying to recalibrate. We don't want to recalibrate. I certainly don't.
Well, we don't know. We
don't.
don't.
Yeah, right the first time. We haven't said that all week, but here we are at the 11th hour, and it's like, hey, guess what? If I could do it perfectly the first time and not have to recalibrate, bravo. I think that's happened. Oh, wait, never in my life. So given that track record, I probably am going to have to recalibrate everything a bit. And when I say that out loud to myself, it's like, I've never really thought about that idea that we have to recalibrate, because how could I know everything?
You can't. Oh, fine.
And how can I know when a situation changes? Think of when we went from typewriters to computers. That was a pretty big shift. No one knew what the heck they were doing with the computer for the first couple of years. It was touch and go.
Except a few people.
A few people, yeah. But even those people had gone through a period where it's like, all right, these ones and zeros. What's this again?
Binary and that's code, the challenge, really? Right? We think that we should have that experience, that knowledge, experience, and perspective. And the question would be why? What would make you think that you know how to do Facebook ads?
Right.
You might have some knowledge, experience, and perspective around it, and some thoughts about what marketing looks like, and yeah, even the people who have all that information, who've studied it all,
are recalibrating all the time.
Don't always have the magic bullet. So I think that's just one of those things that we're always doing it, and I think that if you're open to the fact that we are always recalibrating, whether we actually intentionally think of it that way or not, I think that you're able to better understand and better learn about what's going on and how to move forward.
I like that. Look at that. I was going to preview next week's topic, but I don't remember what it is. Do you?
Something that comes after recalibrating, I think. Probably has something to do with, because when you recalibrate, you have to make a decision about what to do next. So I would imagine that has something to do with that.
I am working hard to see if I can find it. And I know we wrote it down, but I didn't do my homework very
All right. Well, I'll do a little bit of talking while you search.
Okay, you do that. That's a great idea.
Well, thanks everybody so much for being a part of our show today. If you have a discovery of the week that you'd like to share, please feel free to put it in the comments, because we know it'll add value to others who are trying to figure it out. And you can also join us in our 2 groups, whether you're on LinkedIn, join the Renegade Success Network for Leaders, or the Ring of Renegades on Facebook. We're having conversations where there's a post up in both of those that give you the opportunity to share your discoveries of the week there. So maybe you don't want to put it in the comments. You'd rather share it in the broader group. And it doesn't necessarily have to be around recalibrating your efforts. Although, if you have thoughts and ideas, it's a great place to share it there and start the conversation. And we also, if you have other things you've discovered this week, it's great to share, because someone else out there might be looking for exactly that same thing, or not that same thing. They might be exactly looking for that value that you're shared to help them answer a tough question that they're trying to figure out, and maybe just don't have the knowledge, experience, or perspective to come up with that as a solution, and then ask themselves the question of whether that makes sense given what's real for them. So we look forward to seeing you inside of those groups. Bobby, were you able to come up with a
I have two words here, Tom. You're going to have to help me. I'm not sure I know what this means. It says year commitment. That's the note I took.
So I think the anytime we recalibrate, we have an option to consider doing what's next, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the next step is committing to what's the next step.
Okay. So I'm sorry, it's your commitment. I bet you typed it and put year. It's your commitment.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense to me. I'm just going by the notes we have.
And I think at this time of year,
I think that's great, because we talked a little bit about this week with the idea that, you've got to commit to something and give it the time that for it to take hold. A plant doesn't grow in 3 days. You put the seed in now I'm doing next week's work. I'm not going any further because we'll have nothing to talk about next week.
Well, here's the other thing about that is that when you're recalibrating your efforts, you have options in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't commit to something, you're not really answering the question.
Correct.
Based on this recommitment, what am I going to do next?
Correct.
Because again, and I also think it's sometimes easier to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not just a response, it's an actual answer. Are you truly committed to the answers that you come up with?
I like it. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a good week.
Another fun week of discussion. So again, we look forward to seeing you inside of our group. If not, take the weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you Monday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern time for our next episode of today's Antidote.
Hey,
go out, make it a great day.
Whoops. Embrace the renegading you, folks. Really. Worth it.
Really?
Really, really, really. Yeah, I can't tell you how much. Yeah.
Is that one of those words that you would really encourage people to use when they're writing? Really?
Yeah, after listening to Hamilton last night, I think it's really, really, really important that, and if you're trying to stretch out that writing, if there's a school kid who's like, I have a 50-word essay, paragraph due, you could put like 12 reallys and really make that thing fit.
Is it a valuable word? Anyhow, that's conversation for another day. That was a rhetorical question, not a question that we needed an answer to.
Okay.
All right, everybody, go out and make it a great day. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.